Hello everyone, welcome to my GMB News channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Sky News was halted for an urgent update as Donald Trump's representatives sat down to open Ukrainian peace talks in Jeddah. Reporter Alex Rossi had earlier been thrown out of the room where the discussions were taking place between Saudi, Ukrainian and American diplomats and had returned to the press room where he gave an update. You can see the journalists, lots of different countries represented here, such as the interest in these negotiations. But we're at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. This is the conference center now. We were taken in to see it, the room. Just before the meeting started, fairly stern faces around that table, again, a reflection of the seriousness of these discussions. I think the best way really of characterizing this is it's a prelude to further talks. They, Americans, really want to explore where the Ukrainians lie. What kind of concessions that they are prepared to make. And I think listening to what Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State who on his way here said, they want to see how serious they are. How serious they are about doing a peace deal. They are optimistic that they will make some progress today. And I think the ambition from the delegates on both sides, the Ukrainian and the American side, is that by the end of the day, they will have at least some kind of shape of what a ceasefire negotiation will look like to end the Russian-Ukraine war. The talks come after a tense period over the past 11 days following the clash between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky during a meeting in the Oval Office on February 28. The Trump administration subsequently suspended U.S. military and intelligence support to Ukraine last week in an attempt to coerce it into accepting a peace deal. During an interview with Fox host Maria Bartiromo, Trump was questioned about his comfort level with the possibility that Ukraine might not survive after he walked away, and Ukraine may not survive. Well, it may not survive anyway. But we have some weaknesses with Russia. It takes two, responded Trump. He added, it was not gonna happen, that war, and it happened, so now we're stuck with this mess. The cessation of all military aid includes U.S. weapons already shipped via air and sea, as well as those stationed in Europe. NBC News reported on Monday, March 10, that Trump will not reinstate U.S. aid to Ukraine even if a mineral resources agreement is signed. He also demands a shift in Zelensky's approach to peace negotiations. Today's discussions will see Kyiv is set to propose a ceasefire in the sea and sky during truce talks, sources say, which will cover the Black Sea and long-range missile strikes, as well as the release of prisoners. Discussions could also resolve the U.S. military aid pause, but it is unlikely that a minerals deal, a key condition for U.S. involvement in a ceasefire, will be struck. That centers on a fund for the reconstruction of Ukraine, managed by Kyiv and Washington on equal terms, with Ukraine contributing 50% of future proceeds from state-owned rare earth mineral resources, oil and gas, proceeds from which will be used to invest in the safety, security and prosperity of Ukraine. The deal would see the U.S. granted access to Ukraine's rich natural resources. The world holds its breath. Ukraine peace talks begin in Jeddah amidst controversy. The tension in the air was palpable as Sky News abruptly halted its regular programming to bring an urgent update. The world's eyes turned to Jeddah, where an extraordinary meeting was underway. Donald Trump's representatives had just sat down with Ukrainian and Saudi diplomats to discuss a possible ceasefire in Ukraine. The scene at the Ritz-Carlton. Sky News reporter Alex Rossi, stationed at the luxurious Ritz-Carlton Conference Center, had been unceremoniously ejected from the meeting room minutes earlier. Now back in the press room, he relayed the gravity of the situation. You can see the journalists, lots of different countries represented here, such as the interest in these negotiations. But we're at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. This is the conference center now, Rossi reported. We were taken in to see it, the room. Just before the meeting started, fairly stern faces around that table, again, a reflection of the seriousness of these discussions. Sources confirmed that the initial meeting was a preliminary discussion, a litmus test to gauge Ukraine's willingness to make concessions. The American delegation, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, was eager to understand Kyiv's position before further commitments were made. They really want to explore where the Ukrainians lie, Rossi continued. What kind of concessions they are prepared to make. And I think listening to what Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State who on his way here said, they want to see how serious they are. How serious they are about doing a peace deal. They are optimistic that they will make some progress today. A precarious situation. The talks came in the wake of a heated diplomatic spat between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Their Oval Office meeting on February 28 had ended in acrimony, and just days later, the Trump administration made a dramatic move, suspending all U.S. military and intelligence support to Ukraine. Critics lambasted the move as reckless. Supporters praised it as a masterstroke of negotiation. Trump, however, appeared indifferent to the fate of Ukraine. During an interview with Fox's Maria Bartiromo, he was asked if he was comfortable with the possibility that Ukraine might not survive. "Well, it may not survive anyway," Trump shrugged. "But we have some weaknesses with Russia. It takes two. It was not gonna happen, that war, and it happened, so now we're stuck with this mess." The terms of the deal. The Ukrainian delegation arrived in Jeddah with a proposal: a temporary ceasefire in the sea and air, halting military operations in the Black Sea and stopping long-range missile strikes. Additionally, they sought a prisoner exchange, hoping to negotiate the return of captured soldiers and civilians. However, sources close to the discussions indicated that the U.S. had a different priority. Their involvement in a peace deal hinged on a controversial economic agreement: control over Ukraine's vast mineral wealth. A key provision in the proposed U.S.-Ukraine agreement included a fund for Ukraine's reconstruction, jointly managed by Kyiv and Washington. Ukraine would contribute 50% of future proceeds from its rare earth mineral resources, oil and gas, with those funds allocated to the safety, security, and prosperity of the country. This deal would effectively grant the U.S. access to Ukraine's natural resource industry. Stalemate or breakthrough. As the day progressed, leaks from inside the room suggested that the Ukrainian side was wary of the proposal. Zelensky's government had long resisted any arrangement that appeared to compromise the country's sovereignty, especially one that handed economic leverage to the U.S. But with military aid frozen and Russia showing no signs of backing down, the Ukrainian delegation faced a tough choice: make a deal or fight alone. The Americans, for their part, played hardball. Rubio and his team made it clear that without a minerals deal, U.S. aid would not be reinstated. The Trump administration sees this as a transaction. One senior U.S. official was quoted as saying, "They're not giving something for nothing." The global reaction. International reactions to the negotiations were mixed. European leaders were reportedly alarmed at the prospect of Ukraine conceding control over its natural resources. French President Emmanuel Macron called for an emergency EU summit, while German Chancellor Olaf Scholz expressed concern that the U.S. was turning the war into a business opportunity. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the Kremlin remained eerily silent. Russian President Vladimir Putin had made no official statement, but analysts believed the Russian leader would be monitoring the developments closely. A ceasefire, even a temporary one, could provide Russia with a strategic pause to regroup. The end of the day. As night fell over Jeddah, the negotiations continued behind closed doors. A senior Ukrainian diplomat emerged briefly to address the press. "There has been progress, but challenges remain. We are committed to finding a peaceful resolution, but it must be on terms that respect Ukraine's sovereignty." Sky News remained live with Alex Rossi and his team analyzing the developments. "I think what we're seeing here is a high-stakes game of diplomacy. Will Ukraine give in to economic pressure? Will the U.S. push too hard? And what about Russia? This is an incredibly fluid situation." The world held its breath, waiting to see what the next day would bring. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my videos, please press like and subscribe for more. I'll see you guys next time.